Hey everyone, welcome back or welcome if you're new here. If you've watched my videos before, you know by now that when we talk about finding our best colors on this channel, we always talk in terms of the three characteristics of color: temperature, value, and clarity. And as we're continuing the series on color analysis deep dives, the topic for today's video is temperature. More specifically, we're going to talk about the two seasons that are impacted the most by the warmth of colors: true spring and true autumn. Let's talk about why warmth of colors is such an important factor for these seasons, and let's compare the similarities and the differences between them so that if you're trying to distinguish between the two to see which side of the spectrum you would fall closer to, you know exactly what you're looking for. As I've mentioned, this video is part of the color analysis deep dive series, which I've started a couple weeks ago. We started with the idea of contrast, and then we talked about skin tones last week, and today we're going to start talking about temperature. If all of this interests you and you're new here, please click on those like and subscribe buttons to help support this channel. I've also organized all of my previous color related content into a few different playlists, just so it's a little bit easier for you to find certain types of videos. So depending on your needs, you can easily look through the different playlists to find the specific content that you're looking for. I'll provide the links to the playlist in the description, so definitely check them out after this video. Alright, let's talk about temperature. In my previous content, I've mentioned that if you're the type that's the most sensitive to the temperature of color out of the three characteristics, then you likely belong to a true season. It's also why these true seasons are sometimes called warm spring and warm autumn, or cool summer and cool winter, because temperature is the most important characteristic. Since we're focusing on warm seasons today, let's talk about spring and autumn. When we look at the colors that belong to the true spring and true autumn palettes, their strongest and the most distinct characteristic is the warmth, and they're quite neutral in both value and clarity. Obviously, the position of where the specific colors sit within the scales of value and clarity will lean more towards one side than the other depending on the season, but overall, colors in both of these true seasons don't really lean towards the far ends of the spectrum when it comes to value and clarity. Just for clarification, for now I'm excluding neutral colors that are associated with each season because I'm going to cover neutrals in a separate video of its own later on. So for the time being, when I'm referring to colors that belong to certain seasons, I'm talking about the basic and accent colors just for simplicity's sake. Now, there's two approaches to interpreting colors in the seasonal color system. The first is by the objective notions of color theory. True spring and true autumn colors are very warm colors that contain a lot of yellow. And if you remember from my previous videos, I've talked about a concept called assimilation effect, where putting blue stripes through a circle makes the color of the circle appear cooler, whereas putting yellow stripes through the circle makes it appear warmer visually. Now, what that means in terms of wearing a very warm color against your skin is that the yellow in the color you're wearing enhances the yellow pigments of your skin tone. Let me show you some visual examples of what I'm talking about, and let's compare when the effect is flattering versus when it's not. Let's start with what happens when the effect is unflattering for you. Here's Jennifer Connelly, and she's often typed as a true winter, which means temperature is the most important characteristic for her, but she belongs in a cool season. And here is Jennifer with warmth in her hair color, and you can see how the skin tone appears a lot more yellow than when she has a cooler hair color. But that excess yellow that's being highlighted is not a healthy or a vibrant glow. It gives the skin more of this sallow appearance, kind of like this weird muted yellow overlay on the skin. I mean, she's gorgeous, right? So you might just think that she looks great regardless, but if you really focus on the skin and the overall complexion, you'll see what I mean by the excess yellow being accentuated in the skin in a less flattering way. Here are some additional examples of the same effect on various skin depths. Now let's look at an example where the effect is flattering. I just watched the movie Argyle with Bryce Dallas Howard in it, and for a good chunk in the later half of the movie, she wears this icy cool blonde, which looks really off on her in my opinion. So I'm gonna use her as an example because I think she's the perfect case of what I'm trying to explain. If we compare these two images of Bryce with an icy blonde hair versus a warm ginger color, we can see how the blonde hair completely washes her out, and it highlights the paleness of her skin quite a bit. Pale Pale skin can absolutely have this beautiful, fair, milky quality to it, but what I'm referring to is more so this lifelessness in the skin that becomes more accentuated with the cooler hair color. It's almost like there's a grayish tint over the skin. On the other hand, with a warm hair color, the warmth in the ginger hair brings out the yellow pigments in her skin in a healthy and luminous way, and it adds life back into her skin. Even with darker hair, the effects are similar. Personally, I think darker hair looks slightly better than the platinum blonde because at least there's some level of contrast added. The darkness does weigh her down though, but apart from the dark hair appearing too heavy on her, a cooler hair color definitely makes her skin tone appear paler and more lifeless, whereas a warmer shade of darker hair adds more vitality to the skin. And again, here are more examples of that same effect on different skin tones. So these are examples of the yellow pigments in your skin being accentuated in a flattering versus an unflattering way by wearing a warm color close to your face. And I've used Bryce Dallas Howard as an example for a specific reason, and that's because your ability to wear orange can be a big hint on whether or not warmth of color is an important factor for you. I have a video on how to choose the right shade of red hair where I explained how a lot of the hair colors that we refer to as red are actually closer to orange. And orange is an extremely warm color. It's the one color that we can't really make any cooler. So being able to wear a hair color like this orange coppery red is a strong indicator that warm colors are your colors. The fact that you're able to wear such a warm color so close to your face without your skin looking like a banana, that's a huge hint. It means that temperature, specifically warmth of color, is a very important characteristic for you that's going to make your skin appear more vibrant. So it's no coincidence that there are lots of redheads that are often categorized into warm seasons and specifically true warm seasons. Of course, there are different types of reds, and there's definitely cooler reds and darker reds as well, but the red hair that I'm talking about here is that coppery, orangey red that's obviously very, very warm. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a natural redhead to be a true warm season. Even if your natural hair color is not ginger, if you can wear a very orangey, warm brown color in your hair, or a bright orange lipstick or an orange top, if you are able to wear a bright orange color anywhere really close to the face without the color making your face appear excessively sallow, that's an obvious indicator that your skin tone needs very, very warm colors that bring out and enhance the yellow pigments in your skin tone in order for it to appear healthy and lively. This is one of the reasons why I don't really agree with the fuchsia versus orange test when you're trying to determine whether warm or cool colors look better on you. Because orange is so warm, unless you're the type that can pull off extreme warmth in colors, it's just not gonna look great on you. So you could still be a warm season, like a light spring or a soft autumn, but orange might still not work for you if you can't pull off extremely warm colors. So what I would recommend is using the color orange not as an indicator to see whether you belong to a warm or a cool season, but more as an indicator to see how far you can push the temperature spectrum towards warm. Because if you can wear orange flawlessly, that can tell you right away that warmth of color is likely the most important characteristic for your skin tone. On the other hand, since you're so sensitive to temperature, that also means that you have little tolerance when it comes to wearing cool colors. If we go back to looking at Bryce Dallas Howard, here we can see in both images the hair color is pretty similar. It's still this very warm ginger, but on the right side she's wearing a cool pink lipstick, and we can see how much the skin tone changes right away. I mean, obviously these are different settings and they probably have different lighting setup, but even so, can you see that grayish tint that I was talking about earlier? With the cooler lip color, Bryce's skin tone almost looks like it has a bluish gray tone to it, as opposed to the left side where she's wearing a warmer color on her lips. So if you're the type where temperature is the most important characteristic for you, the fuchsia versus orange test that I was talking about earlier, that test will definitely work on you because you will see a noticeable difference between the two. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the method for most people, but it does work for some people if temperature is the most important. So as I mentioned earlier, there's two approaches to interpreting colors in the seasonal color system. And we just talked about the first approach, which is looking at the objective visual effects that different colors can have on your skin tone. But the second approach is not as black and white. And that's because it has more to do with how we associate and interpret colors in our minds. So it's related to the psychological effects of colors. If you think about it, the whole seasonal color system is represented by the 4 seasons of the year. I mean, duh, that's why it's called seasonal colors. But what that actually means is that colors belonging to each season are colors that remind us of those seasons. If we think spring, we automatically associate it with various colors of flowers, fresh green grass, ample sunlight. These are obviously warm and bright colors. On the other hand, if we think autumn, we automatically associate it with images of the changing colors in the leaves, the grass that's still green but maybe not as bright as spring grass, the color of pumpkins. So when we think autumn, we think of colors that are still warm but definitely cozier, a bit more toned down and earthy, and colors with a bit more weight than spring colors, right? This is also why I was saying in previous videos that there is some relationship between color seasons and patterns as well. Without even realizing, we subconsciously associate certain colors or color groups with certain types of patterns. If we look at these patterns, the larger details between these images are quite similar, but don't you think that the side with the warmer, earthier tones are working more harmoniously with the patterns than the side with the navy and white? So what I mean by psychological effects of colors is that we subconsciously associate certain color groups to certain seasons, and those associations can also evoke certain emotional attributes as defined by color psychology. Now, how is this important for color analysis? Similar to colors being associated with emotions, different faces with different features and traits and proportions are also associated with certain impressions. And I think that finding your color season really comes down to seeing the objective effects of color theory and understanding the visual effects that certain colors can have against your skin tone. But beyond that, fine-tuning your personal palette and finding colors that work especially well for you also requires an understanding of your own inherent impression and connecting the dots to the psychological effects that colors can create. So you kind of have to take both approaches of understanding the visual or theoretical effects versus the psychological effects of colors and find the right balance between the two. Since we're talking about temperature today, if we focus on true seasons for the moment, the reason why the word true comes in front of these types is because these are the color palettes that remind us the most of what we typically think of when we think spring, summer, autumn, or winter. So in that sense, they're the most representative of the 4 seasons, which is why they're called true seasons. For example, warm colors in general evoke an inviting and comforting feeling, and warm and bright colors, so colors leaning towards true spring, are more vibrant, energetic, or uplifting, cheerful, youthful, etc. Whereas colors leaning towards true autumn are heavier, cozier, richer, more mature, maybe a bit more grounded, etc. And these psychological effects can be created not only by temperature, but by the different characteristics of colors as well. There's obviously the 4 seasons that we associate certain attributes to, but light colors or colors with high value can also evoke certain emotions, and same with the depth of colors, the clarity or the softness of colors, etc. Now, to visualize this with an example, here's the beautiful Leslie Mann. And like we talked about earlier, her hair color is obviously very warm, and she's wearing this bright orange lipstick, and she makes it look like it's an easy color to wear, which it most certainly is not. So when she wears very warm and bright colors, she looks vibrant and her skin glows, as opposed to wearing this pink fuchsia dress, which again, that grayish tint is becoming quite visible in her skin. And if she goes too far into autumn colors, then the color starts weighing her down. So she's obviously in a warm season and she wears vibrant, true spring colors quite well. Now, if she wears a toned down warm pink like this, does this necessarily look terrible on her? I don't think so. I think she still looks very beautiful. Her skin tone still looks healthy. Maybe in the slightly more muted pink, the skin tone is starting to show a hint of that grayish tint, but I think it's an improvement from the fuchsia dress. Now, if we look at a close-up of Leslie's face with the soft pink and compare it against her wearing a warmer and more vibrant color, I think we can definitely see here that the vibrant color works better for her. And a part of that is because, yes, her skin tone looks warmer. We can see the yellow pigments in her skin being highlighted more in a good way that gives her skin a nice, beautiful glow. But I also think that the color matches the impression of Leslie's face better. Leslie has this cute and lively image about her that makes her look really youthful and fresh, but the toned down pink is obviously more diluted, less warm, softer, and it evokes a calmer and slightly more mature feeling that doesn't necessarily highlight the warm and energetic image that Leslie inherently has. Like I said, she doesn't necessarily look terrible in terms of how her skin tone appears against this color, but the vibe of the color is not 100% matched to the inherent impression of her face. So this is what I mean by looking at seasonal colors from two angles. There's obviously the visual effects that certain colors can have on your overall appearance, but there's also the psychological aspect of colors and the emotions evoked by the colors matching the impression that you as a person give off. The reason why I think this approach is helpful is because it allows you to use colors more freely. If you can develop an eye for distinguishing colors in multiple facets, then you can say true spring colors not only enhance the glow of my skin tone, but the warm and bright feeling of the true spring colors really complement the vibrant and youthful energy of my face. But say if I want to wear colors that are not as warm and vibrant all the time, if I want to wear something a little softer or something that looks a little bit calmer, or if pink is my favorite color, etc. You can kind of test these boundaries to see how cool can I go with my colors, how light or soft can I go, or how dark can I push my boundaries so that the skin tone doesn't appear overly unhealthy or pale. And the colors that I land on may not be the best of best colors for me, but that's fine because I know and understand why they're not the best colors, but they still work. And I also know from an objective standpoint that these are the limits that I can push my boundaries to. So finding your season can depend on the objective visual effects of colors on your skin tone. But the key to understanding your color palette and really being able to utilize colors without feeling limited comes with an understanding of how the colors really work together with the inherent impression that you naturally have. All right, we've gotten a bit sidetracked here, so let's get back to the main topic of seasons affected by the warmth of colors. If you figured out that warmth of color is the most important characteristic for you, you might be debating between true spring and true autumn. So let's go over the differences between the two seasons and how you can distinguish between the two. If we compare the colors in the true spring versus true autumn palettes on these scales of the different characteristics, they're both obviously very warm in terms of temperature. And in terms of value, spring leans more towards light, so they're medium high in value, whereas autumn leans more towards deep, so medium low in value. Similarly, with clarity, true spring is medium high and true autumn is medium low, so more on the muted side. Now, what that means in terms of the skin tone is that autumns will have a bit more of a muted and opaque quality to their skin. Value, of course, is a quality that has an effect as well, but the reason why I'm hesitant to talk about using the value of the skin color as an indicator to determine your season is because then we start thinking that everybody who has a darker skin tone leans more towards autumn or winter. And as we've seen with many examples in previous videos, that's just not the case. You could be a spring or an autumn, whether you have light or dark skin. It actually has more to do with the ratio of different pigments that are showing up in your skin. If we take a look at these two circles, both circles have the exact same ratio of the three primary colors, yellow, blue, and red. I've used different opacity levels for each of the primary colors to create this color that looks like a skin tone. Now on the right circle, let's try altering the ratios by increasing the opacity level slightly. So we'll take the yellow from 60 to 65%, the blue will raise from 30 to 32, and then the red, let's just raise it by 1%. Now between the two colors, you'll notice that the color on the right became a little bit darker because we added a little more blue. But more importantly than the value, can you see how the color on the right also appears slightly more muted and opaque? We can obviously do the same with the lighter skin tones too. This time I've adjusted the ratio to 30, 15, 10 on both circles, and we can see how the color has become a lot lighter than the previous example. Now if we were to adjust the right circle again, this time let's try reducing the opacity level even further. So let's make them 25%, 13%, and 9%. And this time you'll see that the left side is, yes, slightly darker, but also more opaque and more muted. So depth of the skin tone has little to do with how the skin tone changes in terms of its clarity. It has more to do with the ratio of the pigments showing through in your skin. And this is why in my previous videos I said that if you're going to compare skin tones, you have to compare yourself to someone that has a similar skin depth as you. So let's take a look at the difference in skin tones between springs and autumns with similar skin depths. Here I have a photo of Amy Adams and Isla Fisher together in the same lighting, and Amy is considered a true spring while Isla is on the true autumn side. Now if we look at the skin tones on both of these ladies closely, I hope you can see what I mean by Isla's skin tone appearing a little more muted and opaque. The difference can seem pretty subtle, but Amy has a bit more of brightness and clarity in her skin tone compared to Isla. If we look at Beyonce and Solange, Solange actually seems to have a bit of a darker skin tone than Beyonce, and I think she is more a bright spring than a true spring. But regardless of the value, we can see how Beyonce's skin tone has more of a muted quality to it, and it looks a little bit more matte than glowy. So examining the skin tone and the clarity is one way to distinguish between a spring and an autumn, and another way to look at it is, remember I talked about a grayish tint in the skin that becomes more visible when these warm seasons wear cool colors? If we go back to the example between Amy Adams and Isla Fisher, they're both wearing black here, and that grayish tint is there for both of them. But on Amy, the gray that's appearing in certain areas of the face is a bit lighter overall, whereas for Isla, it's a slightly darker gray, so that bluish tone becomes a little more prominent. And this difference is pretty subtle, but it kind of makes sense because autumn skin tones are more muted and opaque, so the grayish tint that appears on these skin tones against cool colors is also more opaque. Now another obvious way, and probably the most sure way to tell between a true spring and a true autumn, is by draping. So trying a spring color and an autumn color on yourself can tell you which level of depth and clarity is more suitable for you than the other. For springs, autumn colors make you appear heavy and it looks like the color is weighing you down. It also kind of looks like you borrowed your mom's clothing. I know that sounds a bit weird, but like I said, the feelings we associate with spring colors are warm, light, cheerful, youthful, fresh, vibrant, and autumn colors are too weighted and too calm for that type of energy, which is why I said it looks like you're wearing your mom's clothes. Whereas for autumns, spring colors can appear quite separated from your skin, and that warm, bright, uplifting energy of the spring colors can actually look more childish on you. Again, the feelings we associate with autumn colors are definitely warm, but heavier, richer, and more mature, and more grounded. And that's why spring colors can appear too light in weight visually. But like I always say, everything is on a spectrum, and with the earlier examples of altering the ratio of primary colors to create different skin tones, we saw how even tiny changes can make a substantial difference in our perception. So it all depends on how your skin tone reacts to the different colors at the end of the day, and that's why there's various systems out there that segregate the different seasons into more than 12 types. I've actually seen a system that separates true spring from warm spring and true autumn from warm autumn, where warm spring and warm autumn can borrow colors from each other, but true spring and true autumn can't. So the point is, there's many different ways to segregate seasons in different ways because everything is on a spectrum. Like I talked about earlier, finding your best colors is about testing and understanding your boundaries on these spectrums in terms of the 3 different characteristics of colors, and it's also about connecting your own inherent impression to the psychological effects of colors and understanding how those colors really work together in harmony with you. I hope you found today's video helpful, and I'll see you in my next video. Until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.